wind gusts, and a rookie's first real test. That's how Sunday felt in Cleveland, and by the time the final whistle blew, it was clear. Shedeur Sanders answered a few questions and raised a lot more. He came into the league with every headline you could imagine: celebrity pedigree, college tape that popped, and a fifth-round label that made scouts shrug. When Dylan Gabriel stayed in concussion protocol, Shepard got the keys. Week 12 in Las Vegas was one thing. A messy debut, a backyard fight, some flashes, and a win. But Sunday against the 49ers was the kind of cold, disciplined exam that separates promising tape from legit NFL readiness. The score, 26-8, doesn't tell the whole story. The weather, the turnovers, and some small but fatal execution errors did. Early on, Cleveland had life. Shedeur dropped a beautiful deep ball that Jerry Jeudy couldn't quite corral, an oh moment that made you think, okay, arm strength and timing are there. And then later, he uncorked the kind of loft that leads to NFL touchdowns. A pressured throw to Harold Fannin Jr. that sailed to the sideline and carried him into the end zone. That play was more than 2 points. It was an exclamation. He can make the touch throws when the pocket collapses. For a young QB, that's everything. But football is a second-half game, and the Browns weren't able to build on that promise. The tape after halftime looks rough. A wildcat snap on 4th and 1 that turned into a fumble. A muffed punt on the very next Cleveland possession that gifted the 49ers a touchdown. Those are the sorts of mistakes that crush momentum and make any prospect look smaller. Add 3 sacks for a loss of 34 yards, a 4th and 16 sack that essentially ended the drive late, and the stat line settles into an ugly sort of clarity. 16 of 25, 149 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. The counting numbers aren't brutal. The context is his. Here's the thing about young quarterbacks. The checklist isn't only about avoiding turnovers or making one great throw. It's about managing chaos, keeping the offense moving in poor weather, and finding ways to generate rhythm when your team's backs are against the wall. Against a veteran front like San Francisco's and wind that was gusting like it had an agenda, you want to see a rookie who can steal possessions, convert third downs, flip field position, make an off-schedule play that lives on the highlights reel. Sanders did some of that, but not enough of it, and not when it mattered. Mechanically, he looked poised. His footwork held up on the pocket throws. His decision-making rarely drifted into hero ball. That's encouraging. The deep ball missed to Jeudy, wind and timing probably both deserve blame. The deep ball that became a touchdown, that's the invention you want to see. But the 3 sacks are a flag. One of them late in the game on 4th and 16 reads like a young QB still learning when to cut contact and when to risk an improbable heave. NFL defenses will test that. They blitz, they slant, they turn your pocket into a set of scissors. A rookie has to learn how to get the ball out or live to see the next play. And that's a hard lesson to learn without a few brutal reteaches. Cleveland's offense as a whole was clunky after halftime. The Browns managed 251 total yards for the game, which on a chilly, windy day might feel workable, until you see how the yardage was distributed and how the drives cratered. 5 second-half possessions for 60 total yards is a problem no rookie can paper over. Play design must create easier reads. Protection schemes must give the QB a chance to make plays. Special teams must not hand the opponent opportunities with turnovers. Those are coaching and situational execution issues as much as they are quarterback development notes. So what should we take away about Sanders as a starter? First, he's not a disaster. He handled himself with enough calm to suggest a baseline of competence, accurate when given time, willing to push downfield, and not prone to panic. He also showed the spark, the downfield zip and timing that made him a draft day conversation starter. Those things matter. Second, he's not yet the definitive answer. The mistakes that cost Cleveland points weren't all his, but they happened under his watch. When you're thrust into the starter's chair, everything you do either stands as a building block or a lesson in what to fix. Kevin Stefanski's decision to keep him starting next week against the Tennessee Titans signals 2 things. 1, the staff wants to see whether a second week of starting reps, this time against a softer defense in a less hostile weather outlook, can give Sanders a fuller, truer look. 2, the Browns appear willing to dedicate the rest of the season to the evaluation process instead of chasing a short-term patch at quarterback. That's a gamble, but it's also an honest approach. If you believe he's the future, you have to give him a string of starts in real conditions, not just scripted reps. What will determine the arc of this experiment over the next 5 games? Health and incremental growth. If Sanders takes the soft matchup against Tennessee and turns it into a controlled, efficient performance with sharper pocket management and cleaner clock-killing drives, suddenly the questions start sliding toward optimism. If the Browns keep gifting opposing teams short fields and turning the ball over in special teams moments, you'll hear the conversation swing back towards stability and stopgap options. There's also the developmental calendar to respect. A quarterback's growth is a series of small, often boring improvements: faster play speed processing, smoother decision trees, stronger pocket presence. We don't measure that in a single game, but we do measure it in patterns. 2 starts now are a beginning of a pattern. 5 starts could be a trend. The Browns have chosen the pattern path. Whether the trend turns into anything meaningful depends on coaching clarity, play calling adjustments, and whether the team can stop shooting itself in the foot. If you want one honest, emotionally simple line from Sunday, Sanders showed flashes that suggest possibility, and he showed limits that demand patience. The Browns' offense sputtered, but there were moments: the touchdown loft, the composure under pressure early, that hint at a foundation. The next 5 weeks will tell whether that foundation can be built into something sturdier or whether it remains a test case for next year. For now, the takeaway is a mixed ledger. Don't over-celebrate the parity of the stat sheet. Don't panic either, because a rookie tossed a decent completion percentage in a brutal day and still lost. A career is a long conversation, and this was its 2nd paragraph: interesting, incomplete, and quietly instructive. Shedeur Sanders' 2nd NFL start answers few questions as Browns' offense goes stagnant in loss to 49ers. After helping lead the Browns to victory against the Raiders in Week 12, Shedeur Sanders faced a stiffer test in his 2nd NFL start on Sunday: windy and wintry conditions in Cleveland, and a significantly tougher opponent in the San Francisco 49ers. The result was a 26-8 Niners win and a performance that answered few questions about Sanders' long-term viability as a starting NFL quarterback. Sanders was mostly mistake-free, but Cleveland's offense was stagnant and ineffective, while mistakes and turnovers doomed any chance of the Browns competing against the superior 49ers. After throwing for 96 yards and a touchdown in the first half, Sanders did little in the second as Cleveland played from behind with a 17-8 deficit early in the 3rd quarter. The Browns didn't score after halftime, and Sanders took a sack on 4th and 16 midway through the 4th quarter that effectively ended the game. Sanders misses on one deep ball, hits on another. Sanders finished his 2nd NFL start, completing 16 of 25 passes for 149 yards with 1 touchdown and no turnovers. He took 3 sacks for a loss of 34 yards. Cleveland produced 251 yards of offense as both offenses struggled in blustery conditions on a 33-degree day, with wind gusts reaching 36 miles per hour. Sanders had a chance at an early highlight reel touchdown, but overthrew Jerry Jeudy on a deep ball on Cleveland's first possession. Jeudy broke free over the top of San Francisco's secondary on 3rd and 5, but Sanders' pass landed well out of his reach. The incompletion led to a punt. Sanders had another shot at a deep ball on 2nd quarter, and this time he hit. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr. broke wide open down the left sideline on 2nd and 9 from the San Francisco 34-yard line. With pressure from his blind side, Sanders lofted a pass that Fannin corralled at the 10-yard line and carried into the end zone. The touchdown was the 2nd of Sanders' career and the first that didn't come, courtesy of a screen pass behind the line of scrimmage. The Browns went for 2 and made it after a penalty on the extra point put them at the 1-yard line, and the touchdown gave the Browns an 8-7 lead. That was the end of Cleveland's highlights for the day. The 49ers closed the half with a field goal to take a 10-8 lead. Then mistakes and an ineffective offense doomed the Browns after halftime. Browns go stagnant after halftime. Cleveland punted on its first possession of the second half, then gave the ball away on its second possession on a botched snap to Fannin on a 4th and 1 Wildcat play. The 49ers recovered the fumble and scored a touchdown on the ensuing possession for a 17-8 lead. Then disaster struck again for Cleveland early in the fourth quarter. Punt returner Gage Larvadain muffed a punt after Cleveland forced a stop. The 49ers recovered and turned that turnover into another touchdown for a 23-8 lead. And on second half drives, when Cleveland didn't turn the ball over, it wasn't effective. In 5 possessions after halftime, the Browns tallied 60 yards of offense while recording 2 punts, 1 lost fumble, and 2 turnovers on downs. What's next for Browns, Sanders? In total, the effort added little clarity for a Browns team that continues to contemplate its long-term future at quarterback. Sanders earned a second start last week after leading the Browns to a 24-10 victory over the Raiders as Dylan Gabriel remained in concussion protocol with a head injury suffered in Week 11. Cleveland appears intent on dedicating the rest of the season to finding out if Sanders can be an effective NFL quarterback. Head coach Kevin Stefanski told reporters that Sanders will start again next week against the Tennessee Titans. Meanwhile, Sunday's result will leave the Browns with more questions than answers. There were no glaring mistakes or miscues from Sanders that point to him going back to the bench. And he made a nice downfield pass in difficult conditions, belying criticism that he doesn't have the arm to be an NFL starter. Those were the only takeaways from Sunday in Sanders' favor as Cleveland's offense failed to produce a competitive effort. The 3-9 Browns have 5 games remaining on their schedule to continue to figure things out. Up next is a softer test against a 1-11 Titans team that's the worst in the NFL.